Alright, so I'm going to have a little more somber feel to this rant, obviously, than the one I had yesterday. As I mentioned, you know, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that Jon Lester would be traded, and that's what happened, actually, pretty early this morning. The Boston Red Sox officially traded their ace for the past several years, Jon Lester, and Johnny Gomes, who, while he wasn't their number one hitter, he was, kind of a great presence in the clubhouse. Obviously, I enjoyed his antics last year and this year. Both those players are off the team, along with other people I'll get to. For Yoenis Cespedes, who I was just joking, to be honest, because all these teams were in on Lester, and I was just saying, if the Red Sox are going to make a trade involving Jon Lester, I didn't want some prospects. I didn't want whatever. I wanted their best player, or one of their best players. And I thought the A's would not trade Yoenis Cespedes. I just threw it out there as a joke. I was saying, okay, well, if the A's want Lester, they have to give us Yoenis Cespedes. And they did. Even so, I'm still kind of hurt. Like, again, I knew the Lester trade was coming. Everybody did. It was just a matter of where he was going. They scratched him from his last start. Still kind of upset about that, but would it really have mattered? Probably not. I know Lester wanted to stay in Boston. I know some people will say, then why didn't he? Well, Red Sox really didn't want him to stay. I think that much was obvious, whether the team was winning or not. Of course, if the team had been winning, one could argue the trade might not have happened. But the fact is, the team wasn't winning. The team's still not winning. These trades make them a little bit better. They made a lot of trades today, 4 in total. They traded Jon Lester, as I mentioned. They also traded Jon Lackey, which I was really hoping they wouldn't, but I had a feeling they would. After they traded Lester, I was really hoping they would at least keep Lackey for the next year or two, see if they could keep him long term, or I know he's in his mid-30s, so I don't know, something about Lackey, Jon Lackey. If I think about all the people from the 2011 Red Sox that kind of just had either down years or just had all these reasons for me to just dislike them, Jon Lackey was probably at the top of that list. A pitcher who I thought had all this potential, who didn't use any of it in Boston for 2010 or 2011, and then he missed all of 2012. And I rooted for him in 2013, even though I had hated him in 2011. I wanted him to at least get back to half of what he was, if only because I was tired of hearing from, sports media and different outlets, even fans saying, Lackey's not what he used to be, all this stuff. And he had a pretty good year last year, and he got them, obviously, along with the rest of the staff, he got them to the World Series. And that last game of the World Series, I'll always remember Jon Lackey pitching it and wanting to stay in. Typical Jon Lackey. He wanted to stay in the game. He wanted to face one more batter, 2 more batters, and, he still won the game. The Red Sox won the World Series, but it was just like, that's the Jon Lackey I wanted in Boston. And we got 1 year of it, and then this season, and now he's gone. That's a bit disappointing. The Red Sox got Alan Craig, who was also involved in last year's World Series for different reasons. If you really want to know what I think of Alan Craig, feel free to go back to last year's obstruction game and all the videos that followed it. I pretty much ranked on Alan Craig. In fact, I'm thinking of just, for fun, putting together a video, but right now it's not fun. Right now it's kind of disappointing, but sort of exciting. The Lester trade I was just kind of coming to terms with, and then the Lackey trade happened, and I know they got Joe Kelly as well, who's a decent starting pitcher. Then now, the last couple trades are kind of perplexing for different reasons, but Stephen Drew to the Yankees for Kelly Johnson, to me it's kind of a neutral trade. Stephen Drew wasn't really helping this team or hurting this team, he was just kind of there. The same way Kelly Johnson didn't really help the Yankees, he was just kind of there. Just the fact that the Red Sox traded with the Yankees is kind of weird. That hasn't happened in like 15 or so years. So there was that. Again, kind of trading the same kind of player, so whatever. But trading Andrew Miller to the Orioles, I just don't like it from any angle. No matter who they would have gotten from the Orioles, and they got another prospect. So I didn't like that. And I'll go into more detail why I didn't like that. If that was the only deal they had on the table and they really just wanted to move Miller for some reason, which again I don't know why they would, but if that was the only deal they had was from the Orioles for Eduardo Rodriguez, then I'd say, okay, I guess do it. But I heard that Andrew Miller was the most inquired player of the Red Sox, that were traded today. That more teams are in on him than, Lester or Lackey or any of the other players. So then why settle for, one prospect from a division rival who you're going to have to play this year and forever? And Andrew Miller could be a really good reliever, closer, starter, maybe, who knows? and you traded him to the Orioles for a prospect that might be good. And I guess a reason, again, I get frustrated with the Red Sox is this change in philosophy. Dating back the last 10 years, kind of like the Yankees, there haven't been many Red Sox prospects that have lasted in the majors if they even get called up. I'll remember 2004 or 2005 even, the kind of Kevin Youkilis saga. It was like he was good enough to be in the major leagues, but they wouldn't keep him there until 2006. I was always frustrated with the Red Sox having these prospects like Hanley Ramirez, like Kevin Youkilis, just on through the list, Lars Anderson, who were supposed to be so good, and yet they never make it to the majors, or they'd make it and then they get sent down. And yeah, Youkilis did stick around a while, and Pedroia got called up and eventually stayed a while. And Papelbon, same thing. Now Jon Lester, that's kind of what hurts, is that Jon Lester, actually did live up to the hype, and I was kind of critical of him for a few years, but he did become a great postseason pitcher. Hopefully he'll help the A's to a World Series, because I have no reason not to root for the Oakland Athletics right now. But, again, just getting back to that philosophy. So the Red Sox, they did call up some of their prospects, obviously. But since then, since 2007, when they called up Dustin Pedroia, Jacoby Ellsbury, Papelbon had already been there, Lester, started to come into his own. Since 2007, how many prospects have actually made it to the majors? It seems like they were trading them all. They were trading them for Adrian Gonzalez or trading them for someone else. I'm not saying that's the right way to go about business either, but it just seems kind of contradictory now, after years of kind of, keeping one or two prospects and trading the rest. Now they're just going to throw all prospects out there. Now Bogarts is going to play full-time. Will Middlebrooks is going to play full-time. Anthony Renato is going to come into the rotation. Alan Webster, Brandon Workman, you name them, And then they acquired more prospects for Jake Peavy. So now all of a sudden, the Red Sox, who were trigger shy when it came to putting minor leaguers at the big leagues, are going to have all these minor leaguers in there. And does it just happen to be coincidental timing, the year after they win the World Series, that the Red Sox front office can kind of fold their hands and go, well, we won the World Series last year, what do you want from us? That's just kind of the frustrating message it sent me. And then to kind of contradict that, though, they traded their ace and their second best pitcher for major league ready talent. So, again, which is it? Are they trying to develop, hitting and pitching from within the system, or are they trying to get it from outside the system? Because Yoenis Cespedes, to me, is the kind of slugger that the Red Sox don't want to sign long term, just like Alan Craig, the kind of player that's going to be a free agent, and you're going to be in the same situation you were just in with Lester, having to pay a 30-year-old or 32-year-old a bunch of money. Now, I know Alan Craig is younger than that, but I'm saying with Yoenis Cespedes, to me, he just seems like a future Yankee, Yoenis Cespedes. Someone who will be 31, 32, will probably have a good year or two for the Red Sox, and then someone's going to throw ridiculous money at him, and he's out the door, unless the Red Sox actually pony up the money and re-sign one of their own players, which it doesn't seem like they're capable or willing to do. They'll put out the big money, or at least they have in the past, for player X. They'll probably overpay James Shields or somebody this coming off season, because I still don't subscribe to the theory that Lester comes back. If he does, then that would be kind of a sick deal, actually. So that's why, out of all the deals made today, I will give them as much of a pass as I can give them on the Jon Lester deal. If you have to trade Lester, you could have done worse. That's all I'll say on that. Trading Lackey, though, just seemed unnecessary. You got Craig, but where's he going to play? He's a first baseman and outfielder. They have too many outfielders already. And they didn't trade Mike Harp, who wanted to be traded. He's like your fifth outfielder, even with trading Johnny Gomes. Now you have, your regular outfielder, your regular outfielders that are going to include Cespedes, Victorino, who admittingly does get injured a lot. But Alan Craig is primarily a left fielder. You can't have, I don't care. I don't really care if Daniel Nava gets into the games that much. I like Brock Holt. You got to play him somewhere. Getting rid of Stephen Drew just means more Bogarts at short. Bogarts makes a lot of errors. I really don't care what anybody says. His hitting might come along, but his fielding is just terrible, whether he's at third or short. Again, it's just a big gamble to take by a front office that in the past, they've been pretty responsible with how they brought up the prospects. They'll bring up one or two at a time, and for the most part, they'll sign proven talent or trade or whatever. And now they're going back on that in a down year, which they haven't had too many down years, admittingly. And in 2012 even, they didn't do all this stuff until late August. But even that, to me, when they traded Beckett, Gonzalez, and Crawford, that wasn't necessarily like, waving the white flag, because that season was already kind of over. To me, that was just jettisoning off bad money. This wasn't what this was. getting rid of Lackey and Lester kind of signaled something else, something worse. Those two weren't just kind of pieces that were really expensive. Those were two pretty good pitchers who they had at fairly reasonable dollars, especially Lackey. So getting rid of them and getting major league talent that they're going to have to pay big bucks to at some point doesn't seem to solve the problem. It just seems to kind of procrastinate it a little bit. Now they'll save money on the starting rotation, but if that starting rotation doesn't perform, they're going to have to sign someone more expensive anyway. And the sluggers they got, they're going to have to pay as well. So I just don't get what this did. This is, again, the Red Sox just being contradictory, not signing their own players, not respecting their own players, deciding arbitrarily that it's time to move on because the scouts have found somebody new to move on to, be it Julio Lugo or Matt Clement, or go through the list of players that the Red Sox have scouted and signed for too much money. J.D. Drew, all these other players they scout and sign for all this money. In the meantime, their own players perform very well, but they say, oh, you've been with the organization 7 years now, so you're gone. And yes, I know they signed Pedroia to a long-term deal. About damn time. I'm still for the Pedroia deal. I know some people aren't, but I think Pedroia will come around. And if he doesn't, well, it's still an 8-year deal, so unless they find another way to jettison him out of town, at least Pedroia will stay. And Ortiz, I'm hoping, will stay. But after today, again, just a really somber trade deadline. I hate to see that, but it's funny, too, because when the Red Sox need help, when they're a contender and they need to make a trade for someone good, they usually don't, or they make a trade for someone kind of mediocre. But this year, apparently it's trade day, so they traded like half the team. The only one I could see benefiting from this is Buchholz, because Buchholz needs to step up now. I'm just so tired of Buchholz. I'm turning into Angry Bobby again, but I don't care. Buchholz is just such a tease his entire Major League career. He throws a no-hitter his second start of his career, has a couple really good years, 2010 and the beginning of 2013, is injured the other years or just implodes on the mound. 2012, he was terrible until he came back and was good. This year he was terrible, came back and was okay, and now is terrible again. So it's time to get his shit together, because with the top two of the rotation gone, he's got to step up and be an ace. And I just don't think he can do it. I don't know. That's just me. Getting ahead of myself. I will have some Red Sox coverage. Actually, it's kind of funny, because I might have more of a reason to watch them now, as much as I don't like that they traded Lester and Lackey. But that's just my thoughts on a very busy trading deadline. What are yours?